Hello everyone, I'm T and this is Dice T. Today we are going to be looking at an RPG product called Ironsworn. Ironsworn was designed as a solo RPG game. It is made for solo play, but it is conducive for groups, co-ops, where you don't have a GM or you can have a GM. However, the game's probably more rewarding without a GM. The core mechanic revolves around what's called the Oracle. The Oracle is a series of tables that you roll against that present very general yet specific items, descriptions, locations, so on and so forth. From these, you take those results and you use your imagination and you meld them into your story. Playing the game requires a bit of, for the most part, honesty. You have to be honest with the situations that your character is presented with. So there's going to be times when you fail, quite a few times when you fail, but the situations that present themselves are going to be improvisational. So you will have to learn to be, like I said, honest with the game system. If you tend to want to be dishonest, it's probably not going to be a very rewarding experience. But we're going to get into the general rules of it, do a quick synopsis of everything, and then we will let you be the judge of it. I'm going to be running a campaign. We just did session 0. Campaigns are going to be every Tuesday and Thursday. We're going to do about a 3-hour session starting at 8:30 a.m., running till about 11:30 a.m. These sessions will be broken down into more bite-sized chunks and presented to YouTube as well. Ironsworn is a game that I have not personally played. I've watched a lot of videos on it and done a lot of homework on it. So this is going to be a bit of a learning experience for me as well. I've never GM'd myself, but the method of play is conducive for how I like to create campaign worlds, and that's through a series of explorative exercises. So this game allows for that. It's a very organic system. You don't know what's going to happen, and the game is very fair, and it's allows you to be both the GM and the player, and it pulls it off. So without further ado, we'll go through some of the rules of this and discuss some of the mechanics. And I'm not going to make this is going to be a pretty short video, so we'll get through it and go from there. Ironsworn was created by Sean Tompkin, and mad props to him, because there's some solo RPGs out there, and this is where my delve into Ironsworn occurred. I was looking for something to do along with the campaign building, to play a bit, to give my imagination some different stretches. And I was looking at D100 Dungeon and 4 Against Darkness, and while those are great games in and of themselves, this is something completely different. So what we're going to do is we'll take a look at some of the components here, and basically the Ironlands is a very savage world. The core thematic component is the Iron Vows, which in the Ironlands, the vow is sacred. So when you declare your solemn promise to serve or aid someone or to complete a personal quest, your honor is bound to that vow. Abandoning or recanting an oath is the worst sort of failure. So this is how typically the campaigns kick off. They are the vow. You typically make a vow, and your first goal is to start acting on that vow. So you roll against the oracle, and we'll cover the oracle in a little bit, to generate some concepts and some ideas, and you manifest them into the environment that's around you, and then you act against them. And then the chain of events is begun, and the snowball starts to accumulate. Before you know it, you're in an avalanche. You are a solo character in the game when you're playing solo. If you play co-op, obviously you have different characters, and we'll get into a lot of the tracks. But you have momentum. The core tracks are momentum, health, spirit, and supply. And they're arbitrary stats. Momentum represents the ways things move forward or against you. Health is your health, spirit, your mental capacity, and supply is a light attrition system, for lack of a better term. And your 5 main stats are edge, heart, iron, shadow, and wits. And we'll get into how those impact the game more, but basically they represent bonuses that you add to your die roll, and you'll see all that. One of the other core components, or the core mechanics of the game, is moves. Moves are typically RPG actions you take, and you'll see that we'll cover the moves. We'll go through all the moves briefly, but they're organized by the type of activity. So you have adventure moves, relationship moves, combat moves, suffer moves, quest moves, and fate moves. And we'll cover those more, and we'll get into the details of those. There's also an expansion called Delve, which introduces Delve moves, but that's for another time. That's not something I'm ready to delve into at this point. The main result mechanic is based on the action roll. You have challenge dice, which are 2 10-sided dice. Then you have an action die, which is a 6-sided die. You roll all 3 dice at the same time. You take your stat, which is wits, shadow, iron, so forth. Add that to your die roll. Add any bonuses you may have. And you have your action score. Then you compare that to the challenge dice you roll. As long as your action score is greater than each challenge dice, you succeed. There are 3 possible results. There's the strong hit, which your action score is bigger than both, and you succeed what you're trying to do, and it typically has a pretty significant positive effect. You have a weak hit, which is when one action score is greater, when your action score is greater than one of the dice but not the other. And typically you succeed, but there's a lesser effect or there's a cost involved. And then there's a miss, when it's below both the challenge dice, and you failed or need to make some serious concessions. There's also a thing called matches. So when both your D10s roll the same number, there typically is a plot twist. If you score a strong hit on a match, there is an opportunity that usually presents itself in a positive way. When you have a weak hit involved with that, you can't have a weak hit involved with that. So scratch that. You're either above both or below. And then if you have a miss, you have a consequence, which is a negative twist on the action. Some GMs or players will also use that roll, the results, if they're ones, like they're weighted, Like a 1 is almost like a critical, double ones is a critical success. Especially the higher you roll on your action die, and vice versa. If you roll double zeros, that's the worst possible thing that could happen. Momentum works certain when you succeed or fail, you gain or lose momentum respectively. At any point where you have your momentum can never exceed 10, but at any point that your momentum is over the challenge dice roll, any one of them or both, you can what's called burn your momentum and remove one or both dice and call them successes. So for instance, let's say I roll a 2 and my momentum's 9, and this challenge is particularly important to make, I could burn my momentum and it resets back down. It starts at 2 and that's where it resets to. And then it would erase these challenge dice and turn it from a miss into a strong hit. That's how momentum works. Conversely, if you have negative momentum, let's say you have a momentum of -4, and you roll a 3 on your action dice, that -4 burns, erases your action score, and it becomes a miss, no matter what the result is on the challenge dice. Actually, if it matches too. So -4, it shows here, suffering negative momentum. And it can never, negative momentum, it can never go below 6, because obviously that's the size of the die. Progress tracks are used to track vows, journeys, and bonds. I think that's it right now. Progress tracks, it takes 4 ticks to fill one progress track. And the closer you get to the end, the closer you come to completing your whatever task you're fulfilling. You can try to complete a task prior. Whenever you, like if you want to try to, you can call, like if you want to try to complete a vow, it's called fulfilling a vow. Let's say you have 7 of these filled. 7.5 doesn't count, 7 does. If you have 7 and you try to fulfill a task, you roll just the challenge dice, and your action roll is automatically a 7 because you have 7 of the progress track filled. You do not get any bonuses for such, and you cannot use momentum. You roll against the action dice, and as long as one of them succeeds, if you get a weak hit, you usually complete the task at hand, and there's like a but in there, or if both are below that 7, for instance, you'd have a strong hit and you have a resounding success, or you could fail completely. So there are times you might want to. It's almost a push your luck element. You could risk it with a 4 progress tracks if you're in an entirely desperate situation and you're just hoping for one of those D10s to be under a 4. You might want to risk it. Challenge ranks are applied to progress tracks. Challenge ranks can be troublesome, dangerous, formidable, extreme, and epic. And how that works is a troublesome task, when you undertake it, if you reach any milestones and you progress the track, it moves up 3 complete marks. A dangerous task moves up 2. A formidable task moves up 1. An extreme task moves up only 2 ticks, or half a complete mark. And an epic task produces 1 tick, or 1/4 of a mark. So it represents how difficult and the steps required to take. And there's 4 moves requiring you to try to actually complete a task. And that is fulfill a vow, reach your destination, end the fight, which is combat, and then write your epilogue, which is effectively retiring your character. Some of these mechanics we're not going to get into. It's a little bit, doesn't really lend itself to just kind of covering the overview of the rules here. But there is enduring harm if you're in combat or some other thing, and you're requested to endure harm. The harm you take is based on the difficulty of your task at hand. If it's a formidable opponent and you're in combat with, and you endure harm, you're going to endure 3 points of health. Take 3 points of health. Typically, it could come. We won't get into, like I said, all the minutia of it, but effectively, you take 3 harm. Stress works the same way. Stress comes against your spirit. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You tailor your character by assets, which are key components that you add to your character. There are paths. Do they list them out here? There's paths, companions, rituals, and combat tactics. I think that's it. So these are things that you can add to your character, and they actually have progression tracks on them, which you can spend experience points. Typically, you get the first item in an asset for free when you choose it. An asset, you start the game with 3 assets. You can spend 3 experience points to gain a new asset, or you can spend 2 experience points to check off any of the remaining boxes that are not checked off. The oracles, when you roll the oracle dice, you're just rolling a D100. You also have the match mechanic in play when you're rolling specifically oracle dice. And that's not for every D100 table, it's just specifically for oracle dice. And one of the overruling oracle mechanics is asking the oracle. And when you ask the oracle, you want to boil your question down into a yes or no question or an either or question. And then you roll and you make a determination on the odds of what you're asking. So if you're almost certain that what you're asking is going to be true, you have basically a 90% chance of that. And then it's likely, 50-50, unlikely, and small chance is only a 10% chance of that being a yes answer. So you could even do that in situational either ors. You fall from if you fall from a high place, what is your chances of somehow being unscathed? Let's say you fell 30 feet. You'd probably have a small chance of remaining relatively unscathed, so you might do the either or in that case. I take physical damage, that'd be 90%, and then I remain relatively unscathed would be the 10%. It's just one example of either or. Bonds. Bonds are another progress track. You can form bonds with people or locations, communities. Is a better way to do it. And bonds represent your relationship with characters, NPCs, and the environments. Bonds have an overall arcing track. Every bond is 1 tick along its progress track. And each bond you get. So there's an overlying bond mechanic. And then you have individual bonds with their own progress track. And just like you can try to fulfill a bond, try to complete a bond with someone early by rolling against the progress track. Equipment is pretty arbitrary. Your supply track is an abstract representation of your general readiness, clothes, ammo, food, water, and mundane gear. So if you lose supplies, you just drop it off the track. So you're going to have weapons, you're going to have armor. All that stuff is not important. It's whatever fits into the story. I think we'll go into the character really isn't under like you have the assets which you can get into. That's really where the core that how you build a unique character as far as mechanics go. There's a lot of different mechanics, so a lot of different combinations can be found. Delve adds even more, and there's a lot of third-party stuff out there that's really well done that can add to it. There's really some really high-quality third-party stuff out there. You start with a basic array of stats 32211, which you place however you choose in there, and those represent your stats. There's grittier campaigns which drop this total. I think it's 22110. I believe is the thing, and then there's one that's a lot more is less challenging, which is I think it adds 1 to all these, so it's 43322, I believe. But for we're just using the default 32211 for our campaign. Vials, bonds. You also can obtain debilities, which are specific conditions like wounded, shaken, unprepared, encumbered. Like if you're wounded, you cannot increase health. If you're shaking, you cannot increase spirit. If you're unprepared, you cannot increase supply. There's banes, which are also debilities. Maimed and corrupted, burdens, cursed or tormented. Delve adds more to these. We covered the asset types. There's companions, paths, rituals, and combat talents. I think what we're going to do now, that's the general gist of everything. We'll kind of like briefly look at, let's see if we can find the tables real quick. Just to give you an idea of what are out there. And then we'll cover the moves. I'll switch over to a different thing to show you the... Oh, one of the cool concepts too is the game world. You have the regions of the Ireland, which has a table if you're ever to determine a location. But there's a description of each of the tables here. We're using a unique world for our campaign, but the flooded land, like this is the flooded lands. It gives you all the features of it and some history. They do that with every system, and then there's unique tables for each one of these. But this is a cool mechanic here. It's called Your Truths. This is when you're generating the world, not your character, and you have options to choose from each thing, or you can create your own. And if you watch the Session 0 video that we did, you will see that we've incorporated a campaign world with this world and kind of fused them together and made some pretty interesting changes to it. So out of all these things though, it gives you kind of some lore and background into the history of the world that you're in. And it's pretty diverse. So, this typically there's one extreme and the other extreme and something in the middle. But you're not limited to this. You're free to set those however you choose and how they fuse into your world. There's also things called Firstborn, which are like elves and giants, and they're the ones that were here before as long as time has been, effectively. And there's beasts and horrors, which are monstrosities and like undead and the things nightmares are made of. Mapping your journeys, you're encouraged to use like a blank map and mark locations all over it, and you'll see how we can do that as well. Foes and encounters, there's a list of a bestiary of different types of things. I want to get you to the tables though. just to kind of give you a brief overview of the tables, you can see here, like if you're ever trying to generate a concept, you roll against the action and theme to get an idea that it's meant to spark your imagination and think of how to fit those things into the situation, and you're to be as liberal or restrained as you choose to be. You want it to logically flow, however. So, and again, there's the region, location. Each location, like coastal water location, it even breaks stuff down so it doesn't quite fit. Location descriptors, there's settlement names. So if you encounter a settlement along the way, you can roll on the table and decide what the name of the settlement is. You can use other tables outside of the game, and for our campaign, like for the elves, we're focused on elves in our campaign, not the humans. The humans haven't reached the Ironlands yet. And you can find more details again in the Session 0. But we're using like Fantasy Name Generator for the names, and we're using like Raven. I can't remember what it is. Raven something. Fantasy Raven Norse, I believe, for the first name, and then we're using Ents, a random Ent table, a name table for the last name. So you're not limited to these random tables. Whatever you find inspiration from, include it. Settlement. If you encounter a settlement and there's trouble, what's the nature of the trouble? Character role, character goal. Like this is when you meet NPCs. You could use it for your own character as well. Character descriptors. It's got the Ironlander names table. Elf names, other names. Combat actions. If you want to know how an NPC is going to react, or it requests you to see how it reacts, you might have to roll on this table. Magical backlash, plot twists. You can actually, they tell you to, there's the challenge rank too, so you can actually roll a random challenge rank. Create your own oracles. They fully support, there's tons of tables out there that you can integrate into that are already made there. And you can go to RPG drive-through. There's tons of stuff out there, and let's switch over to the actions. I don't think there's anything else here. There's a lot of other stuff that they're like hacking it, playing in other worlds, high magic settings. They talk about different things, tweaking assets, playing without assets. So we'll switch over to something else right now. Is this the one we want to shut? Okay. I started making a system for. I'm working on making a system for Foundry. Our campaign we're going to be using. I was too anxious to play. Our campaign uses Roll20. But I had already set up some stuff in Foundry, so I'm going to show you the actions in Foundry, and then we're going to call it a video. These are all the actions. I had set up journal entries for them with action cards on them. So the green represents adventure actions. You have face danger. And when you attempt something risky or react to an imminent threat, envision your action, roll if you act. And then it gives you the stuff that you do based on, and then your results if you have a strong hit, weak hit, or miss. Secure an advantage. When you assess a situation, make preparations, or attempt to gain leverage, envision your action and roll. If you act with speed, with charm, with aggression, so it gives you situations, and then you have your results. Gather information. When you search an area, ask questions, conduct an investigation, or follow a track. Roll plus wits. If you act within a community or ask questions of a person with whom you share a bond, add +1. That's one of the reasons why bonds can be important. Healing. When you treat an injury or ailment, you roll plus wits. If you're amending your own wounds, roll plus wits or roll plus iron, whichever is lower. More adventure actions include resupplying, making a camp, checking your gear, undertake a journey. Undertake a journey is a big step that has a progress track, and you have a rank, a difficulty rank associated with it. And based on each time you complete a part of the journey, it's called a waypoint, some leg of the journey. And at each waypoint, something can happen. And it's kind of an overarching abstract journey mechanic that allows you to travel long distances potentially in a shorter, narratively appropriate manner. And then reach your destination is rolling against the progress. Those are the adventures. Combat cards. We'll go this one first. You have battle. When you fight a battle and it happens on a board, envision your objective and roll. It's got the situations that it pertains to. Managing initiative and using other combat moves. Initiative is something that if you have it or you don't have it, other things can happen. And some things are not available unless you have an initiative or don't have initiative. So when you score a strong hit, you take or retain initiative. When you score a weak hit, you hit, but you lose initiative to your foe. And then there's things, again, like I said, you can do things based on having initiative. Entering the fray is when you choose to enter combat. You determine the difficulty of the combat, and then it's a track just like the other progress tracks. And that to end that track, you would end the fight, which is rolling against the progress. A lot of the combat narratives have a pay the price oracle roll, and we'll get to that in a moment. You can strike when you have initiative. You can clash without initiative. You can try to turn the tide. Once per fight, you try to risk it all and really go for it. Those are the combat actions. Delve is outside of the scope of this video, so we'll overlook those right now. We'll come back to Fate in a moment. Quests. You can swear an iron vow, which is when you're initiating that vow. You do have to roll when you do that, and there's potential for strong hit, weak hit, and miss, which just require, typically is an obstacle if you fail. It doesn't mean that you can't swear the vow. It just means that there's something else that might get in the way to prevent you from starting it. Reach a milestone is when something significant happens along the lines of your quest, of your vow. This is when you actually mark the progress. And this is something that you have to leave up to your discretion with the events as they evolve. If you start discovering things that are progressing along your quest and are doing things, reaching locations, learning of evidence or clues, or making headway on your vow, you have to be honest about it. You be honest with yourself about it, and you reach a milestone, and these things start to mark your progress. Then you can fulfill your vow, which is rolling against the track. And things happen. Fulfilling a vow is one of the most serious aspects of the game. So you have fulfilling your vow. If you have a strong hit, you get one more experience than if you do it with a weak hit. And then if you miss, your quest is undone. So you envision what happens, or ask the oracle and choose one. You can recommit to it, which is you clear all but one of the filled progress marks, and then you raise the quest rank by 1 if it's not already epic. Or you can give up, which is forsake your vow, which is a huge negative. You suffer a huge spirit hit, and if the vow is made to a person, community, or whom you share a bond, you test your bond, which could break a bond. So there's huge potential significant detracting to not fulfilling a quest. So you got to be pretty sure about it. Advance, you can, this is when you spend your 2 experience points to upgrade an asset or 3 to get a new one. Mark your failure. There's a failure track that if you score 40 every 40 failures you score, you gain ticks. You gain for every 40 ticks you gain experience. I'm not exactly sure. Oh, here it is. Learn from your failures. You can actually, it's a progress track. So as long as your failure is 6 or greater, you can roll a challenge dice and compare your progress. You ignore momentum for this, and you have strong hit, weak hit, and miss. Advance a threat. When you give ground to a threat through inaction, failure, or delay, you roll on the table. Now, I believe these were added to this, but mark your failure, learn from your failures, and advance a threat, and wield a rarity are all delve actions. So we'll just skip the rest of those right now. But you can advance a threat, and then you can wield a rarity outside of the scope of this. I want to try to get through these a little bit quicker. Relationship. When you're interacting with NPCs, you can compel, which is a persuasion check. You can sojourn, which is seeking assistance in a community. Draw the circle as challenging someone to a formal duel or accepting a challenge. You can forge a bond, test a bond, aid your ally, take a hiatus, which is an extended time recovering in a safe place while a threat is active. So take a hiatus is a delve-specific thing. Or you can write your epilogue, which is retiring from your life as Ironsworn. And then finally we'll do Suffer. We'll do Fate real quick too. You can endure harm, which is potentially taking physical harm, or you're enduring it. When you reach 0 health, you run the risk of hitting this table and facing death. When you're about to the brink of death and glimpse the world beyond, you roll plus heart to face death. If you get a strong hit, death rejects you. Weak hit and then miss, you're dead. Your companion may endure harm. You can endure stress, which is similar to the endure harm table, and you face desolation, which is similar to the face death table, or face death action. Out of supply is when your supply is exhausted. And then you have face a setback when your momentum is at its minimum, and you suffer additional negative momentum. You choose something to happen. And then finally, we have the Fate card. We already discussed Ask the Oracle, and then you have Pay the Price. When you suffer the outcome of a move, you choose one. You can make the most obvious negative outcome happen. So if the storyline lends itself to an obvious outcome, you can opt to have that be the outcome. You can envision 2 negative outcomes. Rate one as likely and rate one as likely, and ask the Oracle the yes/no on this. So you can have a likely outcome and an unlikely outcome. Is that bandit going to spare your life? Not likely. So, but he has a 25% of sparing your life. Or roll on the following table. If you have difficulty making the result fit the current situation, roll again. So you roll on this table and you pay the price. So there's some crazy stuff that can happen in there. I think that's about that about covers it. That's a snapshot of everything. This video is about 40 minutes long. I don't want to drag it out any longer, but that gives you a synopsis of what's going on with Ironsworn. It's a fantastic game system. 40 minutes does not do it justice. I was just trying to give a synopsis for those people that may be interested in coming to check out the live streams or watching the YouTube videos. What are the mechanics behind the game? This is a free download. I should have said that from the beginning. It's a free download, PDF download that you can get from Ironsworn.com or DriveThruRPG.com. I'll put links to both in the bottom. Ironsworn's got some other resources. They have a Delve expansion, which is fantastic. Adds a lot of sophistication. I believe there's a Sanctuary expansion on the way, but they just finished a Starforge, Ironsworn Starforge Kickstarter, and Ironsworn Starforge looks incredible as well. I'll do probably a video on that to kind of parallel the differences and kind of feature what's going on with that. I'm looking forward to playing Ironsworn Starforged as well. So that's it. I know I was just rambling for 40 minutes, but that's everything in a nutshell. So check out Ironsworn if you're not sure what it is. There's other plenty of YouTube videos out there, like Me, Myself, and Die, Fifth Age Comics, Gamer Geeks, I think it is, which focus on the solo aspect of it. There's some other ones that I haven't watched, which are two people playing. I haven't watched those yet. I hear it's a very rewarding co-op experience. Other than that, give it a try. It's amazing. I'm so excited to get going on this. And choose your inspiration. Your inspiration isn't just from these books and tables. You can choose your inspiration from anything. I love random tables because they force you to think outside of the box and how to fit these unique scenarios and characters into your immediate experience, and that is a wonderful tool as a DM to enhance thinking on the fly like that and coming up with unique scenarios that you might not otherwise think of. And this forces you to step outside of that little comfort zone and push the envelope quite a bit. So Ironsworn, Sean Tompkin, amazing job. I look forward to getting going on this Tuesdays and Thursdays, 8:30 a.m. We'll be posting the videos here as well. So thank you so much, and everybody have an awesome time. Thank you. Peace.